So why did God let Trump lose? Real simple answer. St. Thomas Aquinas. God only allows bad things to happen when he can turn it into a greater good. St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, in the meta-modern era, that's what we're going to call it because we're the era next to the modern era. We don't have an appropriate name for the devil or for Satan. It sounds so dated. So I call him the loser, the biggest loser, the loser of all time. And the reason why is because God always gets the last say. And God turns around everything the big loser does. As Michael Scott would say, oh, how the turntables. Oh, how the turntables. All right. And so we have this came up because this week I unfortunately played a young man to a long state sentence, 3 to 6 years, and it came up and he said something very good. He said he wasn't going to let this act define who he was for his life. And I said, you're absolutely right. You can have Paul. Whenever I counsel somebody in jail, I counsel read Paul because Paul wrote what he did, in big chunks of it when he was in jail. And he went from killing Stephen and persecuting Christians and doing evil things to being the great apostle. You can let a big fall ruin your life, or you can let a little trip ruin your life. The whole purpose is to not let either one ruin your life. And so God can turn it around, and he can turn even bad things into good. So what would be the good things that we could see? Well, number one, right off the bat, fixing the American elections is something that have had to been done for a long time. Being in Philadelphia, seeing the absolute corruption with 55 districts that always score 100%, and always 100% for Democrats. You can't get human beings to do 100% of anything. Yet 55 districts in Philadelphia and like 99 in Chicago score 100% for the Democrats every single time. You can't get people freaking back.
Totally lost you, brother. You still there? Losing you, brother. Can you hear me?
Of people, you can get 100% of people to vote for the rest, right?
Totally breaking up, brother.
So
can't hear you. Can't hear you.
That Biden is. Am I back?
I feel like I'm talking to R2D2.
So the number one thing, I'll go on. The number one thing, you can't even get.
Totally lost you now, man. You're spiraling. I got a spiral on you. I lost you. He's gone, folks. My brother's gone. I would say to his point, though, I think that he's back. He's back. There he is. We completely lost you, brother. You came back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm back.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So you can't even get 100% of people to die because Jesus came back with Lazarus, but you can get 100% of the people to vote Democrats in Philadelphia. So him fixing this, throwing the light on the evil of the fraud in our era, so we're like a third world country, that's the number one best thing to come out of this. And when these 2.1 million votes, because now this week Pennsylvania is now going to start doing a forensic ballot check, and we're going to find out exactly how many Philadelphia votes were actually fraudulent, right? And it's been this way forever. But when in Arizona, there better be 2.1 million original votes for Maricopa County, because if there's not, there's going to be a big problem. So that's a number one big thing to use. Number two, actually,
I just got to interrupt you. They're already apologists out there are already saying they're going to get different numbers. Democrats, the media is working overtime to smooth the surface on that one.
Well, they could be off a little bit, but if they're off a lot, they got a big problem. Now, the number two is actually probably the biggest one is bye-bye Mike Pence. Mike Pence was going to be Bush part deux. Okay, it was, remember, Ronald Reagan defeated the Soviet Union, and that was an amazing thing. But he brought back conservatism, and we were set to soar for a good millennia. But We were sold out by the Bushes. Stay out of the bushes. So the Uniparty took over. So yeah, Ronald Reagan won, but the Reagan Revolution went right down in the tank immediately. So the idea that he got rid, that we now know that Pence was another Paul Ryan in waiting, that's huge, because we can't afford another win like Trump and then lose the war. So we win the major battle, like Reagan won the major battle against the international communists, and Trump is going to win the battle against the domestic communists, and then lose the whole war because some uniparty creep like the Bushes or the Pences gets in there and defeats us from the inside. So that's a huge win. And then the third win is we're about ready to see the greatest comeback of all time. Comeback Kid Trumpy is back at it. I don't know if you watched his recent rally down in Florida, where in a rainstorm 35,000 people came out to see him. Where good old sleeps with his sister can't get 30 people to visit this, to see him in Pennsylvania. So and he's speaking now, today at CPAC, and he's already starting to sue a class action suit against a big tech and company. And he's got a little Mar-a-Lago. He's now finished construction Mar-a-Lago, so he's got like a portico like he did at the White House with people running around. He is literally still the president of America, because people care about what he says, not this idiot. This idiot is just a joke. Yeah, he's just a joke for entertainment at this point. The guy who's still moving things is Donald J. Trump. We're about ready to see the greatest comeback of all time, and that's another reason. Now for people who doubt me, I just want to point out that one of the things is one of the moment in my life where I decided I will never listen to, quote, a political intelligentsia again, was a moment I saw that idiot Christopher Hitchin complain about God, saying, what kind of God can there be that would allow Holocaust? And then he made the argument that Hitler was a Christian. I fell out of my chair laughing because, of course, Hitler hated Christ, because why would Hitler hate Christ? Because he was a Jew, you idiot. But this so-called political intellectual, Christopher Hitchin, would go on and on about how, what kind of God there is there that would allow the Holocaust. And I'm thinking, like, boy, is he ignorant. God respects our independent free will, and so he has to respect our independent free will. But he's such a merciful and good God that he ameliorates it as much as he can. Yes, horrible things happened to 6 million Jews, but from that horror, you saw the beginning of and the eventual creation of the Israeli state. So the worst possible thing could happen, then created one of the greatest things that could happen then, a state for Israel, the state of Israel. Now, Palestinians, a bunch of idiots going to jump up and go, let's do the Palestinians. Whoa. I'm still waiting for the Hagia Sophia, the Hagia Sophia, come back to second church in Christendom, and all of North Africa that used to be part of Rome. They lost a line again. And if you could ask those Palestinians whether they liked it before, now they're living with modern medicine and modern economy, and they don't have that bad of a life. So it's actually good for the Palestinians too. Again, God allowing goodness from something that you were determined as bad. Now the greatest of all that I can think of is a good old story of Patton. My favorite story about Patton. For people cry about how could heaven shine and allow the Auschwitz to happen. Well, he didn't just allow it happen. He created the Third Army. He put it in the hands of probably our greatest general, General Patton, and they stormed the Nazis and they broke the back of the Nazis. Now, at one point in this battle, the Germans, Hitler had created the battle of Bulge. He culled together his armor. He put him together. He tricked the Allied forces into the weak spot of not knowing it was coming. He sent them all in and created the Battle of Bulge. Was trying to get to Antwerp to force, and if he was successful, could have even created a Dunkirk Part 2. Montgomery sat and did nothing. Eisenhower ran for Paris, but good old Patton was ready because he saw it was going. He had a genius G2 intelligence officer who saw this, and they sent it up the line to Eisenhower. Eisenhower did nothing about it. Anyway, he pulled out of the attack he was and cut across the salient that the Nazis had created. Now, in the middle of the battle, things are not going well. And he gets a priest and he goes to a church and he says, he takes his knee and he says, "Sir," I love the fact that he calls God sir, I don't have any air cover. You have clouds up in the way. I'm beginning to wonder whose side you're on." And he then begins to berate God, right? Time goes on, right? What he didn't know was that he had created the best armor unit in the world, but at the top of the spear of that was the greatest armor commander, a guy he would later refer to, yeah, that guy's as good as I am. It probably was better than him, General Abrams. He would later be on General Abrams. He was only a colonel at that point. It was the tip of his spear. Colonel Abrams is sitting there, at the battle, and he has less tanks left now than that are in Bastion itself. And he's seeing the poor Air Force guys come in and getting shot out of the sky and burning down and falling into the into Bastion. And he knows it's getting close, and he knows it's almost over, and he doesn't have the forces, but he is the greatest tank commander of all time. And Patton's giving him orders, and he goes, "I'm not going to do that." Any other army, he would have been a cashier. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to attack further on the flank. And he just went all the way. He winds up leaving the infantry behind him. He winds up going through his own barrage because one of the Allied artillery barrage spotter got killed. He pushes through and he relieves Bastion. The end of the story, of course, is that good old Patton finds another church, finds another priest, and goes to it and says this prayer. And this is the part that's left out of the story. He goes, "Sir," Patton here again. Apparently, he didn't talk enough to the big guy. He goes, "All right, I apologize for doubting you at all, and I want to thank you for that bad weather, because it tricked the Nazis into committing suicide and creating this battle so that we could wipe them out and break their back." And that is the truth of it, because Hitler threw that last gasp in there. It was literally the cockroaches coming out, and it was the chance for God had prepared it. He prepared the greatest tank unit, led by the greatest tank colonel with the greatest tank general in charge of it all, to stop the Nazis. So the answer to good old idiot Christopher Hitchens was that heaven didn't just sit on their ass. Heaven moved heaven and earth to provide all this stuff to stop the evil. And it's the same lesson to each one of us. Stop whining about it, because God did provide. God provided because he created you, me, you, and all the rest of us. And it's our job to get off our ass, to use our free will and as the forces of heaven, just like they did back then. Heaven doesn't sit there on its butt. Only whiners like good old Christopher Hitchens, the atheist, the secularist, the bums, the clowns in the CRT. Although now we're pro CRT because the Democrats are the real evil. Those guys, those are the problem. And so that's our lesson today. The short of it, if I was going to sum this all up into one final phrase, it would be this. Are you ready, brother? Are you ready? Are you ready? You ready for it? It's all good.
All good. Because God loves you.